Our story begins 100 years ago when a giant meteorite fell upon the continent. Soon after, giant insects called Zergs emerged from within the rock, multiplying rapidly across the world. These dangerous creatures immediately entered into direct conflict with humans. However, humanity's firearms were unable to withstand the sheer number of creatures, causing humans to lose a vast amount of territory. After many years, a genius developed a technique known as spirit contracts. This ability allows women to transform into battle spirits and men into their masters. And thanks to this new power, humanity managed to defend the small portion of land that remained. 100 years later in the present day, a crowd gathers around a large, glowing pink crystal. The test then begins with a young woman touching the crystal. The evaluator comments on the armament the young woman received, which was a weak rank sea sword. Immediately after, the girl leaves disappointed by the low result, having achieved such a poor level. While our hero Han Zhan thinks he has just arrived at the ceremony with no idea of the talent he might achieve, the examiner calls for the next person, the young Xiao Mei. The redhead approaches quite confidently. She then touches the crystal, which begins to glow intensely on the stage. The light is so strong that it blinds the young girl's vision. Suddenly, a powerful spear appears. This leaves the old evaluator in disbelief that the young Xiao Mei obtained the immortal blood spear, a rank S equipment. The crowd is also shocked by the girl's status, commenting that if she were to unite with someone equally powerful, they would be invincible. But immediately after receiving her equipment, the woman goes to her boyfriend, Han Zhan, the story's protagonist. Xiao Mei coldly tells him she wants to break up, as they are now on completely different levels, leaving the young man utterly speechless. The girl then turns, telling him to forget about her from now on. Because of this, a group of boys laughs at the situation, making Han Zhan feel awkward. In the past, the protagonist always obeyed the redhead, giving her massages and preparing her food. In the next scene, recalling the past, Xiao Mei throws her lunch away, belittling the young Han Zhan, who begs her not to break up with him. Now, in the present moment, a group of bullies starts to mock the young man for losing his powerful girlfriend, saying he wasn't worthy of her respect. Han Zhan, however, firmly replies that there is still a possibility he could awaken a rank S or higher talent. Hearing this, the redhead merely laughs in his face, saying that Han Zhan would never be worthy of that level of power. Then it's Han Zhan's turn to be tested, and he walks slowly towards the artifact. When he touches the crystal, at first nothing happens, leaving everyone in the audience silent. But as the crowd begins to mock him, a blinding light suddenly explodes on the stage. The young Han Zhan awakens a rank SSS technique, the incredible divine resurrection, shocking everyone. Immediately, the attitude of all the women present changes, and they throw themselves towards the protagonist. One blue-haired girl even comments on being a cosplayer, and that they would have a lot of fun together at her place. However, the protagonist turns away, commenting that all those women are superficial and would only hinder his progress. Then, the young man begins to read his status window. The screen shows that his talent is divine, possessing various abilities that will be detailed throughout the story. At that moment, his ex-girlfriend, Xiao Mei, appears behind him with the utmost audacity, asking if he wants to form a duo with her. The hero remains speechless, pondering the proposal. He uses his new ability to check the redhead's status, while she has the audacity to say that, from today on, he can hold her hand. Han Zhan is impressed by his own power, which truly allows him to see all the hidden information about Xiao Mei's contract. Directly, our hero refuses the terrible offer. As Han Zhan walks away, looking for better proposals with his new power, sometime later, two girls scorn another young woman who only has beauty, but is merely rank E. The girls belittle this girl's spirit contract, saying she won't last long in the academy due to her low level. Soon we are introduced to this young woman, Xia Yuwei, who is isolated and saddened by the malicious comments about her usefulness. The young woman questions why they treat her this way, just because she has a low rank. Disoriented, Xia Yuwei runs off, and along the way she bumps into the protagonist. As the girl was about to fall backward, our hero firmly grabs her, asking if she is alright. Upon confirming she is fine, Han Zhan views Xia Yuwei's status and notices something incredible. He discovers that even though she is rank E, the girl possesses one of the 10 strongest pieces of equipment in existence, which surprises our hero. Yuwei is lost for words while Han Zhan says it was nothing. Gently touching the young woman's hair, the young man asks if she would like to be his official partner. The girl becomes very embarrassed course, by the request, while the other girls around are enraged by the young man's choice. Director Chen Pu tries to intervene in the situation, saying that the young man cannot be so careless. The director claims that one should not choose a partner based solely on momentary feelings, and before the young Xia Yue could refuse the proposal so as not to hinder the hero, someone arrives shouting for them to wait a moment. A brute appears, calling out the name Zhao Hu, and interrupts the conversation. That man was none other than the grandfather of the redhead Xiao Mei, who had just broken up with the protagonist minutes earlier. Zhao Hu furiously demands to know why our hero used his SSS talent to intimidate his precious granddaughter. Grabbing the young man by the shirt, the grandfather continues, saying it was arrogant of him to think himself superior to Xiao Mei. The brute tries to slap the boy, declaring that this was his end, but suddenly, he is stopped by another person. It was Director Chen Pu, who asked Vice Captain Zhao Hu to control his nervous impulse. The brute then states that he will only leave when a contract is formed with his granddaughter. Han Zhan interrupts them and declares that he will form a contract with Xia Yue no matter what. He ends up grabbing the young Xia Yue, telling them to go and formalize the contract, but the girl feels she is hindering the protagonist. Without a second thought, the hero replies that she is worth it. Lights with glowing chains begin to appear around the couple as Han Zhan activates his divine perception on the girl. As young Xia Yue screams, a purple sphere appears around her. Then, the girl transforms into a magnificent golden sword, and the system soon announces the success of the contract. The weapon floats in the air as the young man admires the blade, marveling at the sight before him. Subsequently, it is confirmed that the bond between the two is SSS level, leaving everyone in the audience speechless at such a display of power. Soon after, Xia Yue returns to her human form and rushes to embrace the protagonist, crying profusely with emotion. During this moment, we see the granddaughter and grandfather moving away from the crowd. Young Xiao Mei continues to complain about being humiliated by the protagonist, but the old man tells her not to worry about it. The grandfather goes on to say that he set a cruel trap for the next day's test to get rid of Han Zhan once and for all. But then, the man questions how the young woman will repay this favor. The young woman hugs her grandfather, quite pleased, and invites him to play video games at her house as a form of thanks. With a serious expression, Zhao Hu states that he agrees, and that they would have a good night. A few hours later, a full report appears in the media about the students' awakenings and various opinions regarding Han Zhan's case. We see that Zhao Hu is the one looking at the phone while he teases the redhead. Zhao Hu asks the young woman what he is good at, and she replies that he is excellent at everything. The scene finally ends with Xiao Mei sprawled on the bed, completely exhausted. The next day, in the cafeteria, someone serves food onto his plate. It is the protagonist Han Zhan, who is calmly having lunch with his new partner, but receiving various criticisms from those around them about the pair being too unbalanced, with one weak side and one strong. Xia Yue begins to apologize for making the protagonist go through such an embarrassing situation, but the young man comforts her, replying that she shouldn't apologize all the time. Furthermore, Han Zhan warns her to only worry about breakfast, otherwise they would be late for today's evaluation. Suddenly, someone calls out to Han Zhan, who quickly turns to see who it is. He ends up finding a young man named Wang Lumao, who catches the hero's attention and begins to show off, questioning if Han Zhan was really that strong. But our protagonist doesn't even care about the provocation, merely asking who that young man was. Wang Lumao introduces himself, stating he is Xiao Mei's new partner, and proves to be just as arrogant as her. Next, our hero makes a pun using the young man's name, which infuriates Wang Lumao. The redhead Xiao Mei, now accompanied by this new individual, grabs his arm and tells him to ignore Han Zhan. She calls our protagonist a failure and says he will soon be exiled from the academy. As the two turn their backs and leave, Wang Lumao makes it clear that this wouldn't be the end of it. The scene then cuts to a large arena. There, the announcer proclaims to all present that the exam is about to begin, explaining that the test has several stages, and passing at least one is considered a success. The venue wasn't very crowded, but even so, the evaluator calls the first pair, formed by Xiao Mei and Wang Lumao. The redhead and her new partner step forward. Standing in front of the gate, they are very confident they will win. When the gate finally opens, a terrifying claw emerges from within, and then a gigantic insect of difficulty 7 appears in the arena, covered in legs and with a very grotesque appearance. Soon the young man declares it's time to begin the battle. The woman transforms into a spear, and Wang Lumao faces the creature. The monster attacks violently, but the young man narrowly dodges and immediately prepares a counterattack. Wang Lumao then strikes the enemy with force. The spear's blade begins to pierce the creature, but fails to penetrate its carapace. The young man leaps upwards, declaring he will try to attack again. With full fury, he charges directly at the creature and manages to pierce through the monster, which lets out a loud roar of pain. The attack leaves a giant hole in the creature's chest. The audience immediately praises the S-rank's skill, impressed by their ability to penetrate the insect's hard structure. From a television screen, we see the monster fallen on the ground, finally eliminated by the pair. In a private room, far from the public eye, a group of organizers watches the fight, analyzing the students' performance. Wei Qing, who is the head of the first district, emphasizes the fact that the pair fought ineffectively against a low-level monster, finding the result disappointing. But immediately after, Wei Qing receives a blow to the head from Master Li for speaking nonsense and disobeying his orders. The leader of the second district, Lin Jingshuan, provides a detailed analysis of the battle, explaining why the pair should have finished the combat with just one blow. He notes that the spirit contract leads a disorderly life, which ultimately hinders the pair during combat. Back in the arena, the announcer loudly proclaims that the pair has passed the stage, breaking a historical record by reaching level 6 in the academy. Meanwhile, the audience criticizes Han Zhan for having rejected the young redhead who is S level, as she would be much more powerful than Xia Yue in terms of her stats. The evaluator then says he would like to call the next pair to the arena, the next pair being our hero and his companion. They stand in front of a large gate, but suddenly, the protagonist notices something strange in the air. As soon as they step onto the battlefield, 10 gigantic level 1 monsters appear to attack them simultaneously. Our hero is astonished by the number of enemies, considering that this was supposed to be just a low-rank test. The extras in the arena mock the protagonist, saying he is too arrogant for choosing such a low-level companion. The announcer explains to the audience that the test's difficulty is based on the students' rankings, but this soon proves to be a big lie. It is revealed that, in fact, the redhead's grandfather bribed the announcer for the protagonist to lose, hoping Han Zhan would fail publicly before everyone. The announcer comments in his own mind that our hero should not have acted the way he did the previous day, as he ended up offending someone he shouldn't have. At this moment, the fight approaches, with the monsters furiously advancing against our duo. And then, amidst the chaos of battle, the girl transforms into a shining golden sword, emanating a very intense energy. Our protagonist uses the weapon with great mastery and, in a single swift and precise movement, defeats all 10 monsters at once. Some extras in the arena watch that impressive feat completely incredulous, unable to believe that the girl was only rank E. In the observation room, the organizers are also impressed by the duo's strength, extremely surprised by what they just saw on the screens. The leader of the first district was very impressed, commenting that the duo eliminated all the monsters in just 1 second, while he himself once took 30 seconds to do so. Lin Jingshuan comments that the test rules do not seem adequate for that duo, despite our protagonist's overwhelming strength. A brute present in the room says that the change in difficulty was intentional, so students wouldn't waste their talents. But deep down, even he doesn't believe what the duo did in the arena. Lost in thought, he questions how the duo could have achieved this feat, and thinks that perhaps 20 monsters would be a more reasonable number to finish them off for good. Weising says that increasing the pressure seems very reasonable to him, as he himself used to deal with that level of difficulty during his training days. The oldest man in the room agrees with the idea, as he wants to see how far the duo's resolve and limits can reach. To push the duo's limits, the organizers release 20 monsters into the arena at once. Our protagonist moves his hands, while making relaxed comments about a song and where he might find a soulmate. A large vortex forms behind Han Zhan, and the golden sword floats in front of him. A blue wave emerges from their position and advances directly to the ceiling, attacking all the monsters in the area. Then, the creatures begin to fall to the ground, completely defeated. Ironically, the hero asks if that's all they have, as if it were just light training for him. This makes the spectators in the audience think that the young man is extremely arrogant. The same organizer, Wei Qing, is impressed again by the result, and this time, he decides he wants that duo on his team as soon as possible. The leader of the third district, Yahello, appears and says that sending such an inexperienced duo to the front lines of a battlefield would not be interesting. Because of this, the organizers begin to argue among themselves to see who would get the duo of Han Zhan and Xia Yue, as they are desperate for useful reinforcements for their teams. Soon after, Shenjeki, leader of the 4th district, comments that none of those places are good for the duo. He states that the best thing to do is send them to explore some ruins in his own district. Comically, the other 2 leaders turn to the redhead Shenjeki, asking him to shut up. But then, the The old man who heads the room interrupts the commotion. He states that what they saw was still not enough and decides to test the young people once more, but this time at the most difficult level available. In the back of that same room, we see the redhead Xiaomei's grandfather become very pleased with the organizer's choice, wondering how Han Zhan would fare in this. Back in the arena, right in the middle of it, there is a giant gate with a character standing in front. The corrupt evaluator then comments again that, according to the superior decision, the difficulty will be raised to the highest level. At difficulty level 3, 10 second-level lizards appear on the battlefield along with 10 thunderbirds. The audience immediately gets scared by the scene. Due to the incredible cooperation of attack and defense of those monsters, dealing with that level of difficulty would not be easy for anyone. Our hero Han Zhan, however, comments that now he will indeed have a worthy challenge, being able to fight seriously. Watching everything from the audience, Wang Lumao says that the young Han Zhan is very arrogant. The creatures then quickly advance towards the protagonist. Jointly, the Thunderbirds let out a terrifying growl. However, our hero does not flinch at all. Using his golden sword, Han Zhan summons several spiritual soldiers to fight by his side. As the soldiers advance, they shout that they will eliminate all the monsters at once and end up attacking the lizards very successfully. However, to worsen the situation, the Thunderbirds launch devastating electric rays that end up eliminating the spiritual warriors. When the rays were getting close to hitting him, the protagonist advances directly into the middle of the horde, emanating a very strong orange aura. Han Zhan leaps towards the creatures, leaving everyone in the audience completely impressed by the young man's bravery. Landing stylishly and firmly holding his sword Xia Yue, we see that he ends up completely surrounded by the lizards and the Thunderbirds. Then, Han Zhan shouts, activating his rupture formation, and throws all the creatures away with the impact. Immediately after, all the monsters appear falling from the sky completely defeated, showing the protagonist's monstrous strength to the entire arena. While observing everything attentively, Wang Lumao wonders how much power is still hidden within Han Zhan. In the observation room, the district leaders watched in disbelief at what they had just witnessed, as the duo had eliminated all those creatures in just 2 moves. The old master in the corner of the room thought to himself that the girl, Xia Yue, alongside the protagonist, had her abilities greatly amplified during the fight. The old master then immediately called for his butler. The man arrived at his master's side with absurd speed, demonstrating his complete loyalty. The servant asked what his purpose was at that moment, and the professor commented that the instruction was to use the butler's special ability to discover the true power level of the boy, Han Zhan. The butler then said that he had tried to do so before during the trial, but he couldn't read absolutely anything from him. The servant completed his reasoning by saying that perhaps this was the same mysterious case as the young Ling Zhen. Incredulous at the information, the master turned, asking if the evaluation crystal had misread due to the monstrous power that the young Xia Yue possessed. The butler replied that this was indeed a possibility, but Master Shutong found the entire situation very strange. The old man said it was necessary for Ling Zhen to meet Han Zhan as soon as possible, but there was still a question that greatly bothered the professor, who asked the servant what the name of the spiritual talent of the contract between the 2 young people was. Very seriously, the butler informed his master that their talent was called Shenung's tripod. The scene then returned to the protagonist in the arena, with the evaluator questioning if Han Zhan was sure he could proceed to the next challenge. Without hesitating for a second, the young man replied that he was. Suddenly, a level 4 horde appeared in the arena, emerging from the portal and roaring ferociously. A giant centipede advanced on our hero, but Han Zhan easily dodged the deadly attack. Immediately after, the young man began to emanate an overwhelming musical power through his magic sword, Xia Yue. With a swift movement, the protagonist finished off all the creatures in front of him without any mercy. Even so, many monsters continued to pour out of the portal without stopping, but Han Zhan decided he would see how far that challenge could push his maximum level. He then began to create a hurricane with his power, sweeping away everything in its path. Soon after, the young man achieved victory against the horde and continued to advance through the challenges, going straight to level 9. After the battle, all the creatures lay scattered around Han Zhan, completely defeated by the young man's overwhelming power. At that moment, the evaluator commented that Han Zhan had already reached level 9 and could stop the test there. But impressively, the hero announced that he wanted to continue to difficulty 10. This decision left the bespectacled evaluator completely incredulous at what he had just heard. Nearby, the audience thought this was impossible, as Han Zhan had just awakened his power and already wanted to challenge a level never before seen in the academy. The scene then cut to the leader of the first district, Wei Qing. He commented that he himself had only managed to reach the 9th level when he was at his peak. A video transmission appeared, recalling when leader Wei Qing achieved this great feat. If our hero won the 10th round, he would break a historical record for the entire academy. This caused the leaders of the 1st and 2nd districts to begin vying with each other, wanting to secure that exceptional talent for their respective teams. Lin Jingxuan, cautiously, lowered his glasses, preparing to fight for the boy. Then, Lin Jingxuan began to exude a purple aura, stating loudly that nothing prevented them from settling this dispute with a brawl right now. Returning to the arena, the white-haired evaluator announced that he would not prevent the protagonist from continuing, but warned that in his current state of exhaustion, Han Zhan would not be able to win. Our protagonist then asked for just a moment to recover. The evaluator understood the request, but warned that, according to the rules of the game, this break could not exceed 5 minutes. Interrupting the evaluator, the boy said he only needed the length of a song to rest. Immediately, a very rapid recovery began for Han Zhan, leaving everyone in the stands completely dumbfounded. This made the spectators realize that even though the hero and his sword Xia Yue were so different in their awakening levels, their collaboration was simply incredible. Now back in the office, the clash between the district leaders continued to boil over to see who could claim the student duo. In the corner of the room, someone coughed loudly, wanting to be noticed amidst all the commotion. It was Liu Jingchun, the leader of the 5th district. He questioned whether the others would really use the boy for battle, even though Han Zhan was so excellent at healing injuries and absorbing energy. Leaders Wei Qing and Lin Jingxuan looked at Liu Jingchun, asking if he also wanted to contend for that promising student. Liu replied that he did, as the boy would greatly reduce battlefield deaths, but the leader of the 5th district was quickly restrained by those two masters, who agreed that this absolutely could not happen. Just as the physical dispute was about to begin, Professor Li intervened in the argument to make something very clear to everyone present. The master explained that all 8 districts already had their responsibilities and contributions very well defined. The 1st district focused on decisive battles, the 2nd handled strategy, the 3rd acted in territorial expansion, and the 4th was dedicated to exploration and information gathering. Then, the 5th district was responsible for healing, the 6th worked on surveillance, the 7th traversed the oceans, and the last district was in charge of covert operations. Together, the 8 districts formed the Great Pillar of Daxia and maintained order throughout the world. Professor Li also confessed that he had frequently thought about establishing a 9th district, but had never pursued the idea. The scene then cut to a gigantic creature roaring loudly in the distance amidst dense smoke. The creature's name was Zerg, a level 3 monster known to all as the Flaming Beast. Professor Li explained that if the boy could survive for 3 minutes fighting against that monster, the 10th round would be considered a complete success. Suddenly, the Flaming Beast lets out an incredibly powerful roar. The shockwave from this roar sweeps across the arena, sending several bystanders flying. Amidst the audience, people begin to question why the young man stands there, wanting a direct confrontation with such a dangerous beast. At that exact moment, a cute scene between Han Zhan and Xia Yue is shown. Our hero asks his sword if it was prepared for what was to come. Without hesitation, Han Zhan bravely charges towards the gigantic monster, which was already ready to crush them with all its might. But the Zerg creature reacts immediately, opening its immense mouth and launching a massive fireball that cuts through the air directly towards the young man. Our hero narrowly escapes that deadly attack, agilely tilting his body to the side at the last second. Right behind Han Zhan, a massive explosion erupts in the arena, caused by the devastating impact of the creature's fire attack. Han Zhan then seizes this small chance and concentrates all his mana into his sword, preparing his power for a strong counterattack. Without wasting time, the young man leaps and floats slightly above the ground, shouting loudly to gather all the power around him. So much power emanates from him that the gust of wind even unmasks a bald man in the audience, tearing off his wig. Even the girls nearby cannot escape the immense pressure of such power, and they have to hold on tight to avoid being blown away. With all that accumulated power, Han Zhan unleashes a concentrated wind attack directly at the colossal monster. Immediately, a gigantic tornado begins to form before him, spinning faster and more furiously. The Zerg monster begins to feel the overwhelming force of that wind attack, and soon realizes it won't be able to resist for long. Then, we are only left with the impressive sight of the Zerg being launched high into the air, spinning like a mere rag doll. As it flies uncontrollably, the flaming beast lets out its last roar of despair before its inevitable end. In a few moments, the gigantic monster is completely destroyed by the overwhelming force of the wind, leaving only small debris flying through the air. In the audience, the bystanders watch, utterly impressed by the absurd power the young man just displayed in completing such an insane challenge. Even with much jealousy, the redhead Xiaomei and her new partner Wang Lumao are also visibly impressed by the protagonist's performance. After the strike, Hanzhan himself reflects that maintaining such a high level of challenge would surely bring severe consequences for his body in the future. Suddenly, the virtual world around the protagonist begins to distort, indicating the official end of that battle simulation. At that exact moment, a mysterious man appears on the scene, saying he is very pleased that Hanzhan passed the entire challenge and managed to advance to the next stage. When the boy asks who the stranger is, the man calmly introduces himself as Lin Jingxuan, stating that he is a very important person in that region. The mysterious man explains that he is responsible for one of the districts, and without beating around the bush, asks the young man a direct and uncomfortable question. Lin Jingxuan wants to know who will win the war, and Hanzhan states that the Zergs might win, but humans would never lose. The young man directly replies that he would fight to prevent that at all costs, so that everyone could live in peace and prosperity. Hearing this honest answer, someone close to the two begins to applaud the young man with great enthusiasm. It was an old man who approaches and asks if the young man would like to be his disciple, while Lin Jingxuan introduces him as Master Li. Upon seeing him, the protagonist immediately realizes that it is the famous and respected Li Shutong, the patriarch of Daxia's most powerful family. Quickly, we see the old man's story from 100 years ago, when the three Zerg emperors united to destroy Daxia. But, at the most critical moment of that war, Li Shutong fought alone against the three monsters, killing them and saving Daxia from total ruin. Back in the present moment, Hanzhan asks if the master truly would like to have him as a disciple, and Li Shutong affirms that he would. Then, Hanzhan respectfully greets him, very grateful for this unexpected honor of being trained by a living legend. Among all the students present, the young man was the one who best suited the old man's demanding tastes for training. However, as it was the first time they met as master and disciple, Li Shutong gives him only a ring as a gift. In fact, it is a special item that functions as an inventory, forged from the bones of a Zerg emperor the old man killed years ago. Furthermore, the old master comments that the ring possesses a deadly and devastating aura, warning our protagonist to be careful with this new acquisition. On the other hand, it is an item that intimidates lower-level Zergs, but conversely, it makes higher-level ones much more aggressive towards the user. He warns that if the young man wishes, he doesn't have to use it, but our hero states with absolute certainty that he accepts the risk and wants to keep the ring. Indirectly, the master comments that he is happy his new disciple is not a coward, while casting a mocking glance at the bespectacled evaluator. Immediately after, the new master congratulates both the student Hanzhan and his partner Xia Yue for their exceptional performance in the exam and invites them to eat something. After that, they go directly to a restaurant to celebrate the great victory in the arena and the acceptance of the new disciple. Upon their arrival, Master Li Shutong announced that he had invited some important individuals to join them, so the duo could get better acquainted with the elite. Then, Lin Jingxuan formally introduced himself to the couple, revealing that he was in charge of the 2nd District's battle zone. Subsequently, they learned that everyone present were brothers in arms, Yeqiu from the 3rd District, Shen Jeki from the 4th, and finally Liu Jingchun from the 5th District. Our protagonist humbly thanked everyone for being there, but the slick-haired, red-headed leader said there was no need for thanks, as they were all like family. Unfortunately, some couldn't make it to dinner, such as the leader of the 6th District, who was guarding the border, and the leader of the 7th, who was out of the country. But just as they were about to speak of the 8th District's leader, something unexpected occurred. Startlingly, the 8th leader appeared out of nowhere in the restaurant, stating he was only a little late, but warned he couldn't stay long. Quickly, he handed over his contact number in case our hero found himself in mortal danger, but cautioned that Hanzhan would only have one opportunity to use it. And just as swiftly as he arrived, the man vanished from the scene like a flash, leaving everyone astonished by his speed. This left Hanzhan completely impressed by the 8th leader's unique and mysterious personality. At that moment, Lin Jingxuan presented the young man with a box containing gifts from himself and his brothers, filled with various materials, clothes, and techniques to aid the duo. Our protagonist was very pleased and sincerely thanked the district masters for their generous gift. However, the celebratory mood was shattered when a fat old woman burst into the restaurant, shouting that they were eating there without her. Xia Yue was utterly surprised and deeply embarrassed to realize it was her own aunt causing such a public scene. The old woman, very rudely, stated that the young girl usually ate at home and accused her of trying to escape to have fun now that she had awakened her powers. However, without even letting the young woman explain herself, the woman furiously lunged forward, attempting to slap Xia Yue's face in front of everyone. But before the blow could land, our protagonist acted quickly and firmly grabbed the old woman's arm, preventing the assault. Without hesitation, the aunt yanked her arm forcefully, yelling at the boy to release her immediately and not to meddle in her affairs. Shouting loudly, the old woman claimed that young Han Zhan only wanted to manipulate the girl using her power and demanded money, stating she had invested a lot in raising the girl. Xia Yue was utterly enraged by the entire situation and the woman's audacity to cause such a scene in the restaurant. Suddenly, the girl snapped, yelling that it was enough and she couldn't stand to hear any more of that nonsense. But the old woman, even more rudely, declared that the girl had crossed the line and was very ill-mannered, which was ironic, as she herself had raised her. Continuing her spectacle, she screamed that the uncle from the 4th district would be disappointed by his niece's lack of manners, threatening everyone present. The leaders at the table exchanged confused glances and questioned who this uncle from the 4th district the woman kept mentioning could be. Completely lacking manners, the old woman yelled, asking who that young man thought he was to hold her arm. She even pointed a finger at Master Li Shutong, asking disdainfully if he was the protagonist's grandfather who was paying the bill. The old woman warned that if he truly wanted to take the couple, he would have to pay with gold, a house, and a car, threatening to call her relatives from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th districts to resolve the situation. Having no more patience for such madness, the old master told the leaders to quickly act and make this crazy woman stop talking. In utter desperation, the young men began making urgent calls, wanting to know how security had allowed this woman to enter their districts. The old woman threatened once more, stating she feared no one there, as she had many powerful acquaintances who would deal with them. At that exact moment, the woman's phone rang loudly, interrupting her scandalous outburst in the middle of the restaurant. Upon answering the call, she received a monumental scolding from the person on the other end, who informed her that as of today, their families were no longer related. Now, with a cold smile on his face, Master Li questioned where those powerful contacts she claimed to have to deal with them were. On the other end of the line, Uncle Nu warned not to involve him in this mess and told the woman she should leave the couple alone, as Han Zhan and Xia Yue were protected by the great leaders. The shock was so immense that the phone fell to the floor along with the aunt, who collapsed, utterly incredulous at what she had just heard. With no way out and witnessing the entire commotion, the restaurant's security guards acted quickly and forcibly removed the woman from the premises, while she continued to make a scene on the floor and in front of the public. Master Li, completely out of patience with the shouting, launched a pressure attack against the woman, who only screamed desperately as she was dragged out. After this regrettable incident, Xia Yue apologized to everyone, visibly embarrassed and saddened by her aunt's unacceptable behavior. But Master Li Shutong comforted the young woman, saying that since she had no parents, her new family would now be them, Han Zhan, his brothers-in-arms, and her new grandfather Li. Inviting the young woman and our hero to live with him, the young woman accepts the invitation with tears in her eyes from emotion. Feeling welcomed for the first time in a long while, the atmosphere lightens, and they agree there's no need for formality, so everyone settles down to eat now that the commotion has ended. Afterward, the master, ever so thoughtful, begins to teach the couple how to eat the fancy dish, drawing analogies to different types of hunters. Our hero then asks what kind of food he would be: cooked, slow-roasted, or blanched. The old man replies that he doesn't know, as everyone has their own path. This makes the boy ponder the matter deeply. Suddenly, the old man notices his food has vanished. We see that young Xia Yue has taken the food for her master, Han Zhan. This makes the boy very happy, saying that their bond will be incredible if it continues like this. Afterward, Lin Jingxuan explains that if they relax together, the partner can grant important and unique abilities to high-level spirit masters. One of these secret abilities is that spirit contract partners can assume two different forms, one human and another materialized as a powerful weapon. To illustrate this, he recounts that the leaders' wives are, at this very moment, bravely fighting in their stead against the creatures at the border. However, Lin Jingxuan highlights a spicy detail, explaining that for them to fight separately like that, the couple would first need to have a more intimate involvement to strengthen the contract's bond. When our hero is asked why he chose an E-rank partner, the protagonist explains his special ability and how the contract transforms into an SSS rank of infinite potential. The leaders are utterly surprised by this revelation, wondering if such a unique ability truly exists, as it's the first time they've heard of anything like it. Our protagonist continues his explanation, stating that he would never choose just any partner if it weren't to unleash such a powerful hidden divinity. The protagonist's old master then seriously warns him never to tell anyone else about this. Changing the subject, the regional leaders inform the master that the territory of Great Xia has expanded by 20% against the Zergs. Upon hearing this, the old master becomes extremely excited and raises a glass to toast with the group. Concluding the dinner on a high note, they share a lively toast among themselves, celebrating the promising future. At the end of the day, after the celebration, old Lee escorts the couple to their new residence so they can rest. Our protagonist jokes with his master, asking if he was already drunk after drinking so much at the restaurant, but the old man laughs heartily, showing he is perfectly fine and completely sober. Once inside the house, Han Zhan is left speechless, as he hadn't expected the old man to possess such a luxurious mansion in that city. Then, the old man comments with a nostalgic gaze that the reason for this is because the dwelling stands on the exact spot where his wife lived her entire life. The protagonist is impressed by this information, as he hadn't known the master was married, and innocently asks if his wife was around the house. But the master replies with deep sadness in his eyes that his beloved wife died a long time ago. This occurred during that great legendary battle against the Zergs, and the world unjustly remembers only Li Shutong as the victor, completely forgetting her sacrifice. Our protagonist feels deeply for his master's pain and realizes he shouldn't have asked about her, touching upon such an old wound. The old man then advises Han Zhan to treat his companion well while she is still alive by his side, as Xia Yue is a very important person and represents the other half of the protagonist's spirit. The boy then respectfully asks the master for his wife's name, saying that if someone still remembered her name, she would never be forgotten from history. The old man smiles emotionally and reveals that the name of his life's love was Ling Mei. He recounts that it was a legendary battle where he killed one of the insects, but during the fight against the other two, she perished, emphasizing that she should receive the honor for saving Daxia from extinction. Turning around, the old man says that they should go to sleep now. Hours later, the elder sits in the backyard, gazing at the stars, deep in thought, fondly remembering his beloved wife. At that moment, the couple appears to keep their master company, startling him with their sudden arrival. The duo says they would keep the old man company, since his wife was no longer among them, and this reminds the master of himself and his wife when they were young. The man then says it's time for the protagonist to begin his training in a martial art called Baki Quan, stating that this is for the boy to grow stronger. Suddenly, with an insane roar, Master Li breaks a tree in half just to demonstrate the extent of his strength. He explains to the boy how the 8 body locks work, which are hidden points that, when unlocked, allow one to reach the maximum potential of the human body. Rapidly, the protagonist begins to imitate the fluid movements the old man performed, almost as if the boy already had great familiarity with that technique. The same powerful energy begins to flow through his body, surprising his teacher, who hadn't expected to see the boy achieve full mastery of that ability in such a short time. But while he trains, Li Shutong decides to teach the boy what a real fight is like in practice, using the 8 body locks technique. And then, with impressive speed, Master Li Shutong delivers a direct punch to the young man's chest, sending him flying several meters away. Now our hero lies on the ground, screaming in pain, while the old man tells him not to be arrogant. Meanwhile, the old man is visibly happy and satisfied to finally be able to impart a valuable lesson to his new apprentice. On the other hand, Han Zhan, realizing the real danger, desperately pleads with his master not to be so violent in future training sessions. The next day, back at Qingtang Academy, the duo walks together as young Xia Yue asks if his face hurt much, with the boy replying that it had been a long time since he felt anything like that. But halfway there, they cross paths in the corridor with a group of stupid boys. It's Wang Lumao, that arrogant redhead Xiao Mei's lapdog. He appears, laughing at the young man's face over the success he achieved in the arena, mocking him for having such a low-ranked and weak ally. Confused, the innocent Xia Yue doesn't understand what he meant by those insults, but our hero quickly explains that the boy is nothing more than an idiot seeking attention. Immediately after that, the two ignore the boy and enter the director's office together. The director gravely informed Han Zhan and Xia Yue that they would have to go to the front lines of the conflict to help protect the city. Immediately, he handed them the official written notification and instructed them to report for duty at the organization as soon as possible. Hearing this, the protagonist Han Zhan felt somewhat apprehensive about the sudden order, and the director acknowledged that the mission was complicated, admitting he had tried to change the decision but without success. However, nothing could shake our hero's determination, and he firmly stated that this was the path he needed to take to become stronger. Later, as they left the room, the bully provoked him again, saying that it didn't matter how strong the protagonist was, was because there were people superior to him and rules that could not be broken under any circumstances. At that moment, now face to face in the corridor, the group of idiots continued to laugh and mock the couple incessantly. Meanwhile, our hero Han John maintained a serious and cold expression, having already decided that he would soon put an end to that insolent worm. Next, to try and provoke Han John, the bully Wang lied, claiming he had spent the entire night with the redhead Xiao Mei and had doubled his power, challenging the protagonist to a fight right then and there. Without hesitation, the two wasted no time and launched into a direct and violent confrontation without even considering the consequences. Then, they charged forward and collided their fists with tremendous force, generating a large shockwave in the college corridor. However, the bully's arm broke immediately upon impact with the protagonist's absurd strength. Letting out a loud scream and crying like a child, the young man became vulnerable. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist Han John appeared to land another blow on the idiot. He then managed to land another brutal punch to the enemy's face to end the fight once and for all. As a result, the bully Yi Fan fell completely unconscious onto the cold floor after taking that more than deserved beating. The duo then began to move away from the scene. Suddenly, the director came out of the room, shouting for a nurse to help the boy. After that, our hero went directly to the service counter to resolve his bureaucratic matters. Arriving there, he told the receptionist in a firm voice that he wished to immediately join the special troop of that district, which left the young man quite surprised. The receptionist informed him that he had already been notified about the two, confirming they were the talented students who would be going to the deadly battle. Quickly typing all the information into the system, he registered Team 0527, which would now be led by Han John. Then, the receptionist provided more detailed information to the duo about how the districts operated, and finally, he pointed to a room in the back, telling the couple to enter. At that moment, upon opening the door, Han John and Xia Yuwei were shocked to see the place completely messy and full of trash scattered across the floor. All this filth left them completely disgusted. Besides the mess, inside the room there was a redhead woman and a lazy man lying on the bed, and it seemed they had been heavily drinking hours earlier. The redhead woman asked who they were, and our protagonist Han John stated he was the leader of Team 0527, which left her quite surprised by the arrival of a new captain. The young man with the patchy beard who was on the bed began to pay attention to the conversation, but he turned to the other side of the bed, stating that it was an affront to have such a young man as captain. Then, he told the two to leave, acting like a complete idiot who didn't know who he was talking to. Leaping out of bed, the man immediately saw the young Xia Yuwei and brazenly asked if she wanted to be his partner, which was a direct affront to our protagonist. Furious and without a second thought, Han John lunged forward and delivered a powerful punch to the young man's stomach to punish that disrespect towards his partner. The blow caused liquid to come out of the man's mouth and nose. The force of the punch was so absurd that it sent the idiot flying across the room, his back hitting the wall with great force before he fell to the floor. The redhead then called the young man by the name of Yi Fan and told him to behave in front of the new captain while she went to rest, but he only asked the girl, whose name was Hong Yingwei, for money. In response, the young redhead simply slammed the door in his face. Now standing, the idiot Yi Fan stated that the team was in complete decline, unable to even afford liquor to drink. While accessing the computer, the young man said he highly doubted Han John would make any difference to the team. Yi Fan then showed the team's qualification compared to others, and one thing that was very striking was the fact that they were last in the ranking. The lazy young man already slumped back down to sit, stating that due to staff reduction, their ranking would cause them to be dismissed to the lower district. He explained that the lower district was complete chaos, entirely without rules, making survival a very difficult challenge. Now that the alcohol was gone, Yi Fan stated that they needed to react so they wouldn't be permanently demoted. Suddenly, the girl on the team said that they wouldn't achieve anything carrying the dead weight of Yi Fan since he no longer even had the will to live. But Han John felt he needed to prove to everyone that he was strong enough to handle all problems, no matter what the difficulties were. Walking towards the door, Han John confidently stated that he would transform that group into an elite team. Next, the protagonist went to the kitchen to talk to the mysterious redhead who welcomed them. Then, the duo sat beside her, and our protagonist used his special ability to discover the girl's true name, which left her quite startled. Responding to the redhead's question about who he really was, the hero calmly said that the ability was just a small demonstration of his true power. Sincerely, the young Han John explained to the redhead that, in his eyes, she would be of extreme importance for them to collectively elevate the team's standing. Finally, Hanjan makes a direct proposal, offering her half of all mission earnings, making it clear he only wants cooperation, not rivalry within the group. The woman stares at him for a few seconds, carefully assessing his intentions, and eventually accepts the proposal. She makes this decision not out of sympathy, but because she sees a significant financial advantage. The protagonist then asks her to sort through the available missions, and he takes responsibility for choosing among them. The girl informs him that she found 3 missions compatible with the group in the system. However, all the tasks are ridiculously easy, and it would take a very long time for them to rise in the organization's rank by doing only those. Our hero, Hanjan, is about to choose the mission that will give them the most points. Without hesitation, the young man selects the mission to exterminate some Zergs. This is precisely the most dangerous task, and also the one offering the highest reward for the group. However, the redhead Hong Yingwei tells him he's crazy for wanting to face it, as the mission recommends at least 6 experienced combatants for any real chance of victory. Even so, Hanjan reassures her with a smile, saying he will handle everything alone, speaking as if it were just another simple test for him. The scene then cuts to a group of angry extras. They had just discovered that the mission was accepted before they themselves could take it. Determined, these extras decide to go after the person responsible for the situation to demand an explanation for what happened. We return to the trio walking through the dangerous zone, with the redhead commenting that the life detector found 8 level 2 insects nearby, possibly forming a nest. The protagonist merely laughs at his companion, full of confidence in both their abilities. Suddenly, something unexpected happens, catching the attention of all group members. Hanjan, without warning anyone, dashes towards the enemies, advancing as if he already knew exactly where the insects were. The redhead panics upon seeing him run alone, and immediately goes after the young man, fearing the worst. Without a second thought, she chases after him to try and help in the battle our protagonist was already waging against the Zergs. But when she finally catches up to him, the scene is unexpected. All the monsters in the area are already defeated, completely scattered across the ground. The girl is very surprised by this, wondering what the young Hanjan's true level might be. He says the mission was completed without any difficulty, so he will collect the valuable materials from the bodies that could be sold for a good amount of money. Afterward, the protagonist leaves the redhead behind, as there is a fallen missing guardian on the ground that she can take back to base. An hour later, some members of that other team who had been eyeing the mission finally arrive at the location. They are surprised to see that the mission has already been completed, noting that 10 level 2 insects are lying there, a number greater than what had been stated in the description. One of them notices the detail and says that all the monsters were defeated with just a single fatal blow. He deduces that the person responsible for this, moreover, was already hunting for a new mission. The scene then cuts to the agency receptionist talking with Grandpa Jiaohu, who is very irritated due to the success of the mission the trio achieved. The man becomes extremely angry upon learning of the protagonist's sudden mission success. In a fit of rage, Jiaohu orders all missions on the board to be taken immediately, blocking any future work opportunities for his rival. The scene changes again, now showing the protagonist and his master Li Shutong talking and eating at his house. The old man asks if the boy wants help dealing with Jiaohu, but the young man refuses the offer, saying he is entirely focused on dealing with the city guardians at the moment. The master warns the boy, saying that the more the nation's teams grow, the more difficult they become to handle, acting like tree branches that rot over time. And that is why, the master says, he chose to train the boy. He believed that Hanjan would be fully capable of handling this kind of problem alone. Changing the subject, the protagonist asks for some advice on the master's secret technique. He explains, a little frustrated, that he cannot advance in his training alone in his current state. However, old Li Shutong merely tells him to remember the phrase about being between life and death, something the young man would come to understand with time. Sometime later, the protagonist is resting peacefully on the living room sofa. It is then that Xia Yuwei appears, a little awkwardly. She says she needs to sleep in the same room as him that night. She explains that the professor intentionally locked all the other doors in the house. The young man politely says he can sleep on the floor so as not to bother the girl, but she insists there is no need for that, stating that there is enough space on the bed for both of them to sleep. The night ends with both finally lying down and resting together. The next morning, the pair goes to their team's room to clarify the situation with the other duo. When the two members discover who Hanjan truly is and what he achieved in the academy exam, they are very surprised. Ashamed, they apologize for having underestimated and mistreated the young man on the day they met. The redhead Hong Yingwei says that someone as strong as our protagonist would only be wasting time staying in a failed group like theirs. But the young man reiterates that he is not there for nothing, and that he is fully willing to change the group's situation for the better. Yi Fan then warns that all actions the group takes from now on will be difficult. This is because the protagonist had offended Zhao Hu, the brute who is now trying to mess with the young man in every way possible. The redhead then comments, quite worried, that all missions in the district have already been accepted by other teams. She asks what they will do now, as the group is officially without any work in the entire city. Showing no frustration with the boycott, the protagonist picked up the device and began searching for missions in neighboring cities. The girl explained that it was indeed possible, but warned that the routes between cities were far from safe. The roads were infested with unknown, high-level monsters, causing many groups to never even reach their final destination alive. The scene then cut to Han Zhan's group inside a jeep, driving along a completely deserted road. They were desperately fleeing from several giant insects that had appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the road. The young Xia Yue asked what kind of creatures were chasing them. Our protagonist explained that they were level 1 Zergs, which always moved in groups and were very dangerous. The man who used to be a drunkard, Yi Fan, then woke up in the back seat. He started screaming in terror about what was right in front of them. Suddenly, the group spotted something terrifying on the horizon, which was sending several monsters flying through the air. A gigantic black hurricane, formed by thousands of insects, was completely blocking the jeep's path. Just ahead of this hurricane, there was another vehicle also desperately trying to escape the deadly storm. The redhead questioned if they should go help the people in the other car. Without hesitation, our heroes decided to help them, turning the jeep directly towards the danger. They made a very sharp turn with the vehicle on the road. This caused the former drunkard Yi Fan to hit his head hard against the back of the car. Even with fluid oozing from his head from the impact, he euphorically declared that he had never been so happy in his life. The story then revealed who was being pursued by those beasts in that tense moment. It was Shang Xiting, a woman of great importance, accompanied by her personal bodyguard inside the vehicle. At this critical moment, the bodyguard warned that if they didn't act now, they would be caught by the storm in about 5 minutes, as it was impossible for reinforcements to arrive in time. Desperate with the situation, he ordered his subordinates to sacrifice themselves to protect the woman at all costs. He knew they wouldn't win, but they had to do it to buy time for escape. Hearing this, the young woman grabbed her communicator and tried to stop them from committing such madness, but the subordinates were very determined and were already preparing to attack the monsters. The escort cars skidded synchronously on the road, and the men began a countdown to launch the attack. Immediately, 2 men attempted to launch missiles against the enormous horde of insects, but the explosive attack had no effect against the black hurricane, and unfortunately all those men were violently sucked into the tornado. While her entire escort battalion was being destroyed outside, the woman remained inside the truck, crying profusely, unable to do anything but listen to the desperate screams of her men. A loud sound could be heard from outside the vehicle, which made the young Shang Xiting quite curious. Then suddenly, an intense golden light tore through the dark sky with such a strong glow that even the insects seemed to hesitate for an instant. It was our hero Han Zhan firing enormous energy beams against the hurricane of creatures, opening a gigantic rift right in the middle of that living storm. Inside the car, Shang Xiting and her bodyguard were completely dumbfounded by the protagonist's absurd ability to disperse the insect multitude all by himself. However, the monster hurricane reacted to the attack, and various black projectiles were launched directly at Han Zhan. But before the protagonist could be hit, the former drunkard Yi Fan appeared in front of him and used his own body as a human shield. As a result of this impact, Yi Fan's body was violently pierced. He fell heavily into the back of the car with several black spikes embedded in his body. Quickly, Han Zhan tried to remove the spikes and said, very worried, that they had to be removed as quickly as possible, as those things were already poisonous. To his surprise, the spikes began to emerge from Yi Fan's body on their own, and the wound started to close magically. Observing that regeneration more closely, the young hero realized that the man's true talent was not just physical resistance, but rather that he possessed an SS rank immortality talent. This made Han Zhan quite curious about how it all worked, as the immortality characteristic would make him recover so quickly that his body couldn't be destroyed. The immortal Yi Fan, full of himself, said that if the protagonist begged, he might reveal what his ability truly did, but our hero merely shrugged at the provocation. Soon after this scene, while the car was still in motion, the young Xia Yue announced that they had arrived at the first mission location. This greatly surprised Yi Fan, At this moment, an even larger horde of insects furiously advanced towards them, revealing very grotesque creatures. The protagonist informed the young Xiaoyue that he needed her weapon form to decimate all those creatures at once. The monsters were getting closer and closer to the group. The hero then unleashed a powerful attack that cut down several monsters at once. This left Yifan open-mouthed at such destructive power, with the redhead Hong Yingwei saying that she was increasingly surprised by Han Zhan's strength. At another time, notifications began to appear on the agency's screens, indicating that all missions were being completed. Several important officials were gathered to discuss the progress of operations in the region. They watched the mission reports in complete shock, as all city tasks were being completed by our hero's team at an incredibly absurd pace. Annoyed by the situation, they got into their jeeps, intending to personally confront the responsible team. Since they were already in the area, they decided to complete the mission of clearing the demonic serpent horde. But a stout man in the group noticed something ahead. They were too late, as Han Zhan's team had already completed that task as well. The squad leader immediately told the driver to turn the car around, as he needed urgent explanations. A young man with a scar on his face even tried to stop the foolish leader from confronting them, fearing the worst. Soon after, another car was seen leaving the city. It was precisely the protagonist Han Zhan's car, accompanied by the immortal Yifan and the girl in blue, Xia Yue. The scene then cut to the central headquarters of the city's guardians. Inside his luxurious office was Su Mingxuan, the third most powerful man in command of the entire city. He observed the system data on the screen, wondering in complete disbelief how all the difficult missions in the region had been completed so quickly. Then, an employee informed him that the protagonist's team had recently entered that area and dealt with all the creatures alone. His assistant soon arrived, bringing all the physical files on the case, and Su Mingxuan asked the secretary to leave the room immediately. Intrigued by the news, Su Mingxuan began to search the system's secret files, trying to better understand the unusual situation. He meticulously researched one by one the history of all the members of that mysterious group that had appeared out of nowhere. Quite alarmed, the commander discovered that each member of that group was classified as ultra-secret, which made no sense to him. But among all those confidential documents, one of them caught the commander's attention much more. He discovered that our protagonist Han Zhan's personal file was completely empty, and he thought that record might have a system error. However, before he could investigate further, his phone began to ring on the desk. On the other end of the line was none other than Lin Jingxuan, the leader of the 2nd District, speaking in a very serious voice. He ordered Su Mingxuan to immediately stop that investigation, as those files were far beyond his access level. The commander obeyed Lin Jingxuan's orders, but remained very incredulous about the entire situation, wondering who this Han Zhan was and how he could be so powerful. The scene returned to the battlefield, showing a giant centipede heading directly towards our protagonist. We see that the creature was already covered in battle wounds and let out a loud grunt of pain, but it was soon finished off for good by our hero Han Zhan. The group had just completed their 18th mission of the day, with the protagonist asking what their current ranking was. The redhead, Hong Yingwei, began to analyze the team's position in the system, while Yifan was very happy with their excellent performance. The redhead then commented that they had managed to accumulate 1,800 points, but even so, the team remained stuck in last place. The entire team was extremely surprised by the news. The redhead immediately surmised that the system was cheating against them. They soon realized that more than a dozen rival teams had joined forces to complete the other missions together, and because of this, those teams' scores were so high compared to our protagonist's team. The group came to the obvious conclusion that it was just another scheme by Zhao Hu. Even so, the young Han Zhan remained calm and confidently stated that there was still a good chance to turn the tide. Now, the group decided they would head towards Deep Blue City. Soon after, the protagonist and his partner, Xia Yue, quickly went to the home of Old Master Li Shutong. Upon arriving, the old man wanted to know how the group had fared in their missions. The young man informed him that they had indeed scored some points, but the final ranking results were not good at all. During the conversation, they ended up discussing the woman the group had previously saved from the insect hurricane on the road. The old master explained that the girl's family was extremely wealthy and very influential throughout the region where they lived. He also said that he had always considered that girl as his own granddaughter, someone he had watched grow up and would never abandon. The old man told the duo that this same girl, Shang Xiting, had been sent to that dangerous region on purpose, precisely to force her not to continue her journey. But fortunately, nothing bad happened thanks to their rescue. At that moment, the old master changed the tone of the conversation and said he had a special gift prepared for the two young people. He pulled out an elegant briefcase and placed it on the table, slowly opening it to reveal two glowing vials, which were actually enhancement potions. The briefcase in question, the old man explained, had been with Shang Xiting's convoy boy that the young man had helped hours earlier, but now the girl herself wanted to deliver that item as a reward to our hero. The vials in question contained rare liquids that increased the physical attributes of those who ingested them, improving physical strength, speed, reflexes, and body durability. The duo then drank the liquids without hesitation and immediately felt a great surge of power coursing through their veins, as if something dormant within them was finally being awakened. The protagonist noticed with admiration that his companion Yahello had unlocked a new type of divinity, directly based on the 4 elements of nature. And not only that, Hanjan also gained powerful new musical abilities to use with his weapon, in addition to leveling up in the system. Shortly after absorbing all this new power, the protagonist's phone suddenly began to ring. The red-haired companion contacted them with urgent news. She said she had found an extremely difficult mission in that region, but one that offered an exceptionally high number of points. Without wasting time, the protagonist and his partner rushed off to find the team. Meanwhile, in the tea room, only the boss and his butler remained. The servant notified his master that they had found Miss Ling Zhen, but she refused to see the old man as she was in Kanghai. Upon rejoining the team, the redhead questioned our hero if he was truly willing to take on that mission and pursue the monster. Desperately, she explained that the explorer was very dangerous, but the protagonist cut off her apprehension, asking if she knew what a red alert meant. He explained that a red-level threat meant that if they didn't stop that monster, the entire city could be devastated. Then, the drunkard Yifan proposed a toast with the captain, cheerful about the challenge, while the redhead walked away grumbling. The scene cut to the group of extras who had previously disdained our protagonist, now atop a tall building, observing a violent lightning storm descending upon the district. They conversed among themselves about the new mission, and one of them even questioned why their superiors hadn't assigned the task exclusively to them. One of the men spotted our heroes approaching and remarked that they would make good bait for the creature threatening to destroy the entire region. We then saw the team entering the storm area. Our hero urged the group to be very careful from that point on. The redhead warned that if they advanced, there would be no turning back. The 4 truly entered the challenge. The group appeared to be in an enclosed environment, like a large warehouse. Xia Yue commented that the place gave them the feeling of being watched, and that something bad could happen at any moment. Filled with fear, the young woman clutched our protagonist's arm, saying she was scared, and that there were strange sounds around them. The girl claimed the place was even draining their energy, and the redhead agreed that it was indeed happening, warning that the longer they stayed there, the worse it would get. According to the mission information, Yifan explained that the group had only half an hour to complete the objective, and if they failed, they would become food for the creature. The redhead then pointed forward, asking if that was the sphere the report referred to. Soon after, they spotted an enormous black sphere floating directly ahead. The protagonist wondered if destroying it would be enough to eliminate the creature threatening the city's safety. But the moment he prepared to attack, the ground beneath them began to distort. The soil transformed into quicksand and swallowed the redhead and the immortal Yi Fan. The ground started to rise, forming gigantic stone walls. The explorer monster's second ability was to grant life, capable of giving and taking power, using it on weapons, tools, and even the very ground itself. And since this was the case, Xia Yue transformed into a spiritual sword to face the challenge together. Now Hanjan launched several attack barrages towards the wall. The blows exploded upon collision, creating small cracks that quickly began to regenerate. This impressed our hero, who was incredulous at such an absurd regeneration ability. More walls began to appear around the protagonist, and soon the young man realized he was being cornered. A Zerg emerged from nowhere and started coming from behind the hero. He narrowly dodged, and the creature ended up being swallowed by the wall. The duo began to run to get out of there as quickly as possible. Then, the scene cut back to the group of extras seen earlier. Their leader warned everyone to stay alert. However, a redhead in the group stated that they were all strong enough and that everything would be fine. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble, and the same walls as before appeared around them. The redhead warned them to be careful, while a silhouette emerged from the mist. One of the men noticed something strange in his captain's behavior. When he tried to speak to him, the man was attacked and grabbed by the neck, questioning what was happening. He then realized that insects had invaded the leader's mind, and, immediately afterward, the insects also invaded his mind. We then returned to the situation of the redhead Hong Yingwei and her immortal colleague. She commented, somewhat ironically, that he was lucky not to have to worry about dying. But the man made it clear that he didn't see this gift as a divine blessing, stating that, quite the opposite, immortality for for him was also an eternal curse. Casually, he remarked that nothing mattered, as they couldn't even leave the place anyway. Subsequently, the woman concentrated energy in her hands and launched a powerful spell against the stone wall that imprisoned them. The structure began to crack from top to bottom, as if rotting from within, until it finally crumbled into pieces. Amidst the raised dust, they could discern a silhouette. The redhead thought it was Captain Han Zhan, but she quickly shouted for the protagonist to be careful. The hero easily dodged the attack and landed atop a pillar. Then finally, the entire group reunited. As they converse, a giant stone hand silently emerges from behind them. The colossal limb attempts to crush the two teammates on the spot, giving them no chance to dodge. At the last second, the protagonist intercepts the attack and destroys it mid-air with a precise strike. He orders everyone to retreat immediately, making it clear that this is far from over. Just ahead, the gigantic stone creature fully reveals itself, rising almost like a living mountain. The protagonist begins to unleash an attack called Swift Wind. This creates a hurricane around the group as the monster approaches, and when the creature attacks, it manages to hurl the redhead and the drunkard away. The punch is so powerful that it creates a shockwave at the location. Our hero then states that to defeat the monster, they must destroy the black orb that powers it. The duo asks the protagonist to advance and destroy the orb while they provide cover. At that moment, the stone creature lunges forward and tries to hit them with a punch. The immortal throws himself forward, activates his shield, and withstands the impact. He warns that this power could only be used 6 more times, so they needed to be quick. This creates an opening for the protagonist to attack the black orb, going all out against the monster. Next, the young man summons a colossal lightning bolt that violently strikes the creature. The energy directly hits the monster's head, and the black orb appears to be destroyed along with the electrical impact. The immortal realizes they succeeded, but looking back, he sees the protagonist gravely wounded after the attack. Our hero sustained a deep wound to his abdomen, but even so, he keeps his eyes open and asks his companion to flee. It is then that a gigantic, grotesque insect appears before them, ready to continue the battle. The monster looks at the group with arrogance and declares, in a threatening tone, that it will finish off everyone present at that very moment. Just behind it, the redhead appears, saying that the adult explorer is truly a surprise. She begins to try and convince the monster to use its illusion ability so they can work together. Amidst the smoke, our protagonist questions his colleague's attitude. The redhead begins to cry, realizing she is being controlled as she questions what is happening to her body. Abruptly changing her expression, she says that now she only wants to kill them all. Upon closer observation, the protagonist notices something wrong with the glow in her eyes and realizes the girl has been infected. It is a special type of Zerg, a parasitic monster capable of controlling the minds of its victims like puppets. Explaining the history, a powerful warrior was once parasitized by this creature and ended up destroying an entire city. After enormous losses, and with the help of the entire organization, they finally managed to stop the warrior. Everyone thought this species had been extinct for 32 years, but one of them was right there in front of the hero. The young man asks the immortal to buy time while he gathers energy for a decisive attack. After absorbing the younger explorer, the enemy orb expanded tenfold in size, so Han Zhan will need to greatly increase his speed to avoid being caught by the attack. He only needs Yifan to buy him the duration of a song. Then, our protagonist begins to emanate great power, healing and regenerating his own body. The infected redhead screams for the monster to act quickly. The insect fires a powerful blue laser in their direction, but the immortal quickly advances and activates his defensive shield to protect the protagonist. He successfully blocks the overwhelming energy. The creature then tries to use the infected redhead to make the immortal lose his concentration at that instant, attempting to invade his consciousness as well. However, Yifan reacts quickly, headbutting her to break free from the control. This causes a small insect to be expelled from the woman's head, just as it happened with the previous group's leader. The creature emerges from the woman's mind and tries to attack again, but the immortal quickly pushes the creature away, realizing he can now only use his immortality 2 more times. He ends up crushing the inferior being. The giant monster fires another blue beam, but the shield successfully blocks it. As the drunkard Yifan questioned how much longer it would take for the hero to finish everything, Han Zhan simply sends his sword to aid the immortal. Jia Yue returns to human form, and the protagonist then takes control of the situation. He asks the two to eliminate the smaller insects while he faces their leader alone. The young man fires a large yellow laser at the evil creature. However, the monster dodges with agility and slowly begins to pull a bizarre sword from its own mouth. The monster attacks, and the protagonist defends the blow using only his hand. The monster's immense power was simply repelled, leaving the creature surprised by the young man's immense strength. It is at this moment that the special glove given by the master is revealed, which absorbs a large part of the impact. Immediately after, the two engage in an extremely fast and violent combat, exchanging blows almost impossible to follow with the naked eye. During the fight, both land powerful blows on each other's shoulders. This causes the two to pull away from the direct confrontation. In his thoughts, Han-Jan concludes that he should finish off the creature as quickly as possible, otherwise the monster would absorb all the explorer's energy. Then he realizes that this is the feeling of being between life and death, and that he needs to end it now. With his gloves emanating power, the young man activates the block breaker. Without hesitation, he dashes forward at high speed. Standing face to face with the creature, he delivers a direct punch to the monster's chest. The blow is so brutal that the creature's structure disintegrates in the air, falling into pieces that scatter on the ground. But the monster's head still says that the hero was the one who truly lost there. This startles the protagonist, who doesn't understand how it is still alive. The creature's body begins to regenerate rapidly. That scene leaves everyone on the team in complete shock and despair, and the drunkard also informs the captain that the redhead had disappeared. Then, out of nowhere, chains began to close in on the group. Immediately after, the creature raised its arms. An immense rock clutched between its hands, and an absurd pressure descended upon the group. But incredibly, the drunkard simply held the immense rock with his bare hands, urging his captain to be quick. The young man's immortality finally reached its limit, with several cracks echoing through his body. Han-Jan realized that Yifan couldn't hold on any longer. Then suddenly, an immense hand was conjured above the monster. The creature couldn't dodge and was struck directly. The group didn't understand who had saved them from their demise, nor how. It was then revealed that this power belonged to the protagonist's master. The old man descended from his carriage, emanating the presence of someone who simply didn't belong on the same level as the others. But before the young man could even open his mouth to thank him or say anything, his body gave out after the intense struggle. He lost consciousness right there, caught by his companions at the last moment. Finally, the protagonist suddenly awoke in a hospital bed, finding Xia Yue sitting right beside him. Immediately after, our young hero looked around, visibly confused, not quite understanding his current situation. But the blue-haired girl explained that after he fainted, the master eliminated the monsters, though some still managed to escape. At that moment, the warrior questioned Yifan's whereabouts, and his companion explained that their friend had suffered severe injuries, despite being immortal. She also commented that the young man's recovery was quite slow, which made the atmosphere in the room a little heavier. Just then, a nurse entered the room looking for Yifan, as it seemed the patient had vanished from his bed. Hearing this, Xia Yue remarked that the creatures had taken the red-haired girl, and that the immortal had probably decided to go after them alone. After that, she also revealed the total loss from the mission, stating that all items from the location had been confiscated, and they had lost 100 points. Immediately, the protagonist asked what his master had said about all of this, hoping for some guidance from the elder. The girl calmly replied that he had left the matter unresolved, specifically so that the protagonist himself would handle everything. Realizing his master's true intention with this action, Han-Jan decided right then and there that he would reclaim absolutely everything that belonged to him. The scene then cut to a group of extras who were discussing how generous Zhao Hu had been to let them keep the hero's loot. They were immediately interrupted when our duo arrived, kicking the door wide open and demanding to know the leader's current whereabouts. Next, one of the thugs present tried to provoke the protagonist, acting with great audacity in front of the young warrior. With no patience for games, the young man delivered a heavy slap to his face, sending the powerless man sprawling onto the hard floor. Immediately after, he challenged the rest of the criminal group, asking loudly if anyone else wanted to try their luck against him. Seeing Han-Jan's power, the extras became frightened and began recording everything to send to Zhao Hu, awaiting their boss's reaction. Meanwhile, the fallen man got up furiously and tried to attack with a knife, but the protagonist grabbed his arm and began to beat him. It was exactly then that Zhao Hu himself appeared in the room, questioning aloud the real reason for the invasion. Then, our hero firmly replied that he wanted his items back right now, and also demanded a formal apology. The brute ordered his subordinates to send the fight videos to the authorities, threatening the young man with a very severe punishment. However, Zhao Hu's henchmen reported that the authorities had replied they would not get involved in the internal affairs of the local guardians. Then, the old man became extremely irritated by the negative response and destroyed the communicator with his bare hands in a fit of rage. Next, Next, the brute changed his demeanor and asked what was needed to end the conflict once and for all without further trouble. The protagonist's answer was direct. He wanted permission to enter the city vault and take everything he could carry. The man strongly hesitated with the audacious proposal, but eventually accepted, imposing the condition that the young man only take what fit in his own hands. What he didn't imagine was that the young man had already prepared the magic ring his master had given him, a rare artifact capable of storing many items. Immediately after, we see our hero finally entering the vault as he prepared to execute his grand plan of total clearance. While this was happening, Zhao Hu commented to his men that it was impossible for anyone to take anything valuable using only the palms of their hands. Inside, the protagonist used a special guide a colleague had given him, which detailed all the hidden treasures in the vault. Next, he saw skeletal remains and the wings of a giant insect, as well as some medicinal plants scattered on the shelves. However, at that moment, something caught his attention, the sturdy carapace of a sixth-order crab that was there. So, the protagonist decided he would take all these precious items inside the dimensional ring his master had given him as a gift. Sometime later, we see the protagonist calmly exiting the vault, while his partner ran up to him to ask what he had taken. But the hero made a certain mystery about his haul, and said he would tell her everything only when they were completely alone. When our hero left, Zhao Hu was very confused, as the young man was apparently leaving the place empty-handed. But upon calling the stock manager, the villain received the desperate news that the protagonist had cleared out half of everything that was there. A subordinate reported that he had informed the competent authorities about the theft, but they said it was their problem and they would not intervene. That same night, the protagonist was resting peacefully when Xia Yuwei emerged from her bath, creating a certain atmosphere. She then invited the protagonist to sleep in the same room as her, saying softly that she had been very afraid of losing him in the last battle. But as she tried to get closer to the young man, a girl in pajamas with black hair suddenly appeared in the middle of the room, completely interrupting the moment. The two became very nervous and jumped out of bed, as they hadn't known there was another person hidden inside that enormous house. When asked who she was, she introduced herself as Li Lingjun, Master Li Shutong's granddaughter, and stated that she now lived in that residence with them. Using his special observation skill, the character realized that the girl was, in fact, one of the strongest magical weapons in the world. Our hero felt a bit embarrassed seeing the girl in pajamas, but she said without any shame that this was how she felt comfortable. She then continued, saying that she was a famous best-selling author, and that those clothes greatly helped her creativity. The strange girl then offered to join them in bed, which made the atmosphere even more confusing and chaotic. However, Xia Yuwei misunderstood completely and said that she couldn't do that because they had just met at that very moment. Li Lingjun then explained that she only wanted to form a contract with the protagonist, which visibly relieved the blue-haired woman. Next, the hero told the young woman that if they formed a contract, he could use his ability to help her awaken an even higher rank. At that moment, the girl began to fidget with her pajamas in an unusual way, which startled the protagonist, who had not expected such a sudden action. She then said with complete naturalness that, in the books she wrote, magical contracts were always made after great physical proximity between the parties. Li Lingjun's sudden behavior startled our duo of heroes a little, but the protagonist Han Zhan brushed it off and began to form the contract with the girl. Immediately, magical chains of energy appeared between the two, and the pact was sealed, causing the girl's powers to evolve. As soon as they finished the contract ritual, our hero praised the young woman's new power and asked to test it immediately right there. At that moment, Xia Yuwei seemed a bit uncomfortable with the situation and said she would go to the kitchen to get a glass of water. But when she reached the kitchen, the blue-haired girl began to hear some strange noises coming from the room, so she rushed back to see what was happening. However, to her relief, Xia Yuwei only found her two companions testing the girl's new transformation ability. The protagonist then showed his new discovery, spiritual energy pills that the new member Li Lingjun could produce with her powers. Next, the group began to talk seriously about their next plans to find the missing red-haired girl. The new member asked who they were looking for, and Xia Yuwei quickly showed her a photo of the redhead. Seeing the image, young Li Lingjun commented that she had seen someone similar at a famous nightclub in the city, and suggested they start their search there. Before leaving the house, the protagonist sprayed all members with a special spray that attracted and greatly enraged Zerg monsters. Inside the nightclub, nightclub while everyone was having fun, our hero asked the bartender if anyone named Bai Shuang had passed through there. The employee gave him a very strange look and shouted for everyone to hear that Han Zhan would pay for all the drinks at the party. While all the customers celebrated the free drinks, the protagonist, not understanding anything, asked what was happening in that place. The bartender then replied that someone had run up a large debt there and said that a man looking for her would pay for everything. The employee continued, saying that the person had left a closed chest for anyone who asked, handing the mysterious object to the young man. Upon opening the chest, they found a note warning that the Zerg reproductive cycle had begun and that 7 parasites were loose in the area. Suddenly, the young man interrupted his reading, telling his friends that he urgently needed to go to the bathroom. Inside, he accidentally bumped into a man with glasses who was standing suspiciously in the spot. Out of nowhere, the man became extremely irritated and lunged at the protagonist with the intention of truly harming him. However, when the man landed his punch, our hero felt absolutely nothing and simply pushed him back with great force. As the man fell, a Zerg eclipse monster leaped from the back of his neck and tried to attack the protagonist with its sharp claws. Without any difficulty, Han Zhan destroyed the creature still in the air, ending the immediate danger with just one precise movement. Afterward, the rest of the team arrived in the bathroom, wanting to know what had happened to cause so much noise. The protagonist then quickly explained that a human dominated by a Zerg eclipse monster had attacked him there. At that moment, Jia Yue said that they had already found one of the 7 monsters, and now they should go after the rest of them. Then, they left the bathroom to find more clues in the area, but a man suddenly appeared with a machete, attacking our hero. However, the protagonist dodged at the last second and delivered a powerful kick to the man, immediately knocking him to the cold floor. Quickly, the mind-controlling creature leaped from the man's head, but the protagonist eliminated the insect still in the air. After that, the woman in blue recognized the defeated man as one of Zhao Hu's trusted henchmen. Our hero then connected the dots and realized that everyone in that nightclub and the infected men had some direct connection to the villain Zhao Hu. The scene then cut to Zhao Hu's office. There, we saw the brute calmly giving lessons to a student. Out of nowhere, someone angrily opened the door, and we saw it was the immortal Yi Fan arriving to demand an explanation. Immediately, he began to accuse the big man of corruption and of using the insects to control the city's awakened students. Old Zhao Hu then coldly said that Yi Fan's wife was dead and that he should just keep quiet instead of making a scene. But Yi Fan began to emanate a sinister aura and said that it was all the brute's fault and that he was there to settle things once and for all. Zhao Hu tried to deflect, claiming the woman's death was merely bad luck, and asked if the immortal wasn't afraid of reinforcements arriving. At that moment, several thugs surrounded the immortal. Then the old man said with a fake smile that the young man had attacked him first. Because of this, all the bullies tried to attack the man from behind, taking advantage of their numerical superiority to finish him off. The immortal even activated his ability to fight, but before he could do anything, the protagonist Han Zhan arrived, knocking everyone down at the door. Everyone was surprised by his entrance, and the hero told anyone who wished to flee to do so quickly, as the matter at hand was personal. But the thugs ignored the warning and rushed at our hero with various weapons in hand, intent on killing him. The protagonist seemed satisfied with this, and delivered several punches and elbow strikes, knocking down the thugs one by one. In a flash, all the bullies were lying on the ground, and the immortal was surprised by our protagonist's improved combat skills. Trying to take advantage of the confusion, Zhao Hu attempted to flee, but the young man was much faster and caught up to him in a few seconds. Without any mercy, Han Zhan delivered a powerful blow to the villain's chest, knocking the corrupt old man to the ground. When he fell lifeless, a controlling insect emerged from Zhao Hu's head and tried to escape from all the commotion. But our hero anticipated the creature's path and finished it off with a single punch, realizing afterward that this was not yet the mother of the monsters. However, at that exact moment, several city guards arrived at the office and saw that Captain Zhao Hu was dead, which enraged all of them. The scene then cut to the city mayor's office, with the secretary asking him to sign some documents. And when he turned to respond, we saw that the mother of the Zerg eclipse monsters was completely controlling his mind. Then, we only heard the screams of the poor woman being attacked by the monster controlling the politician's body. The scene returned to our heroes. Han Zhan then told the woman in blue to contact their master urgently, and when Xia Yue tried to say that she wouldn't leave his side, the young man took her by the hand and told her to go again with much more firmness. We then saw that the infected mayor was giving orders for the guards to hunt down our protagonist's squad throughout the city. Then, the politician made a sinister face and said that he hadn't expected our heroes to fall into his trap so easily. We returned to our protagonist, who was leaving the building to stay away from the rest of the team and be arrested alone, protecting his friends. As soon as he stepped out of the building, we saw an old man flying on a hoverboard, saying that the young man was being arrested. The mysterious elder used some kind of pressure power to force our hero to surrender immediately. Then, the story showed us the protagonist's master, Li Shutong, telling someone hidden in the shadows that they should reveal themselves soon. The mysterious figure then appeared and said that the master didn't seem worried, even with his successor's life in great danger. The professor began to emanate a monstrous aura and asked if they really had to do something so extreme. But the hooded figure said he wasn't afraid, since that old man on the hoverboard was just a clone of the true villain of the story. Master Li Shutong then laughed and accepted that he couldn't do anything now. As the hooded figure disappeared into the shadows, he said that he still had some tricks up his sleeve. Then, his colleague Lin Jingxuan appeared and asked if he should help Han Zhan, but the master replied that he had already planned everything. The scene cut to our hero, tied to a chair. Then, the flying old man arrived and asked if he wanted to plead guilty, but the protagonist firmly denied any guilt, which made the old man punch him hard in the face. The villain continued saying that the young man only had two options: join them or be banished from the game of life forever. The protagonist then asked if that man and his organization were responsible for the mind-controlling Zergs. The old man confirmed the suspicion and proudly said that those Zergs were the most powerful weapons in their secret arsenal. After hearing this, Han Zhan refused both options without thinking twice, saying that he would do everything his own way. The next day, we saw our hero, tied up, heading towards the gallows, while a voice announced his sad end. The announcer, who was next to the mayor, said that everything was ready. The mayor asked if Han Zhan's team had already been captured. When the man started to answer no, the mayor rudely interrupted him, telling him to leave. Sitting, the mayor began to wonder why, even very close to the end, the protagonist remained so calm. In the crowd, several onlookers recognized Han Zhan as the prodigy who had awakened with an SSS level at the academy. But at this moment, the mayor presented himself on stage, which surprised the people in the crowd quite a bit. Then, he announced that a genius would be sent to heaven, but that he deserved this fate because he had hurt innocent people. The mayor continued lying, saying that the protagonist had made an alliance with the monsters to end the city's peace. Then, the entire population began to support the mayor and now wanted the young man to pay for these crimes he did not commit. At that moment, the mayor smiled and gave the order for the man in charge to activate the final execution mechanism. Quickly, the machine was activated, and the blade began to descend dangerously towards the protagonist's neck. However, at the last second, someone pressed a button that interrupted the mechanism and saved our hero's life. Then we saw Shang Xiting, the woman Han Zhan saved in the desert, appearing in the middle of the crowd with her soldiers. The mayor asked furiously why the merchant guild was getting involved in that internal city matter. After that, Han Zhan's entire squad revealed themselves in the middle of the crowd, ready to defend their friend. The scene then cut again to Master Li Shutong, talking with the hooded figure in the shadows. When the man in the shadows said that all that drama was over, the master just smiled confidently. The shadow then disappeared, and someone started talking on the master's cell phone, saying that they hadn't found the leader of the enemy organization. But when Li Shutong asked about clues, the man on the phone said that he had found an organization called Breaking Down. The scene cuts back to our heroes. The crowd around them is surprised that someone interrupted the execution. Shang Xiting then announces to everyone present that it was a grand setup orchestrated by the mayor. She shouts for everyone to hear that Han Zhan was a true hero, not a villain as they were claiming. At that moment, we see our liberated hero moving at high speed with his weapon in hand, declaring that he fights for the good of humanity. Then a large screen shows Han Zhan defeating various monsters, and when the crowd sees this, they are very impressed. However, the flying old man arrives, emanating great power, and immediately silences everyone with his thunderous voice. The protagonist's squad is intimidated by the mysterious man's terrifying aura and wonders who he is. At that moment, the old man declares that killing Han Zhan is his corporation's mission, and no one will stop them. Using his powers, the old man summons a giant hand from the sky to try and crush our protagonist. But before it could reach its target, something strikes the giant hand and it explodes in the air. The old man is surprised, but before he could do anything, a mysterious shot hits him squarely and knocks him to the ground. The crowd is confused by all of this, but Shang Xiting spots a mysterious figure on the rooftop of a building, who quickly flees. Immediately after, the mayor, enveloped in a red aura, tries to attack Han Zhan. The protagonist says that this chaos is actually a move orchestrated by his master, then prepares to fight. A powerful punch comes towards our hero, but he manages to dodge it at the last second. The mayor is astonished by the boy's speed, but before he could do anything, our young hero was already right behind him, preparing a counterattack. Hanjan strikes the enemy in the face, and the mayor is thrown to the ground, causing a large explosion. The politician was quickly defeated, but then the Mother Eclipse Zerg leaps from his forehead, attempting to escape, but the protagonist catches the creature in midair and easily crushes it with his hands. He then shows the monster's remains to the crowd and explains that in reality, he was protecting humanity from Zergs that had infiltrated society. While our hero delivers his speech, Master Li Shutong appears behind him, asking how the experience was. The master continues, asking if Hanjan had finally experienced the difference between life and death. The young man replies that next time he wants to resolve everything without needing help. Li Shutong congratulates his student and says that the last evil insect was found in the city. He only regrets that the enemies were eliminated before they could be interrogated. The master then comments on the secret society that had infiltrated among the city's guardians, but says he still doesn't have much concrete information. At that moment, the immortal Yi Fan appears and reveals to the group that the body of the red-haired girl, Hong Yingwei, has finally been located. This makes Hanjan very sad. When he asks where they found her, the immortal replies that the bodies of several people were found in the sea, near the beach. We see several coffins floating in the sea, and inside one of them, the red-haired girl lies lifeless. But something sinister begins to happen to her. The girl's face begins to change and darken. Then, her eyes open, and a creature begins to crawl out of her mouth. Sometime after all this commotion, we see all our heroes having lunch together peacefully. They comment that all team members have advanced to level 3 in the system. The protagonist says that Li Lingzhen also caught up with them and evolved to level 3, and that Xia Yue learned several new and useful skills. Shang Siting then offers to make a contract with Han Zhan, but he politely declines, saying that he only makes contracts with spirits that possess divinity, so they can evolve. Master Li Shutong asks what Han Zhan's plans are, now that he has evolved as much as possible by fighting only within cities. The boy replies that he wants to continue evolving no matter what. Hearing this, the master says he will send his student directly to the battlefield, a place that has been in constant conflict for many years. He continues, saying that since it was a heavy training mission, the girls couldn't go with him this time, as their ideal training should be elsewhere. The scene then cuts to a large wall filled with cannons firing non-stop. Several giant snakes are being hit by the weapon fire, and several wounded soldiers appear on the ground. Then we see two men, named Xiaoya and Zhang, discussing with great concern the team's recent losses in that battle. One of them began to complain to the other, saying that he was waiting for urgent reinforcements, especially since his squad had already lost 2 men. At that moment, a helicopter lands at the location, and the protagonist Han Zhan emerges from it, ready for action. Next, the protagonist introduced himself, stating his name to the 2 soldiers present. The men found it strange that he hadn't brought any spirits with him, as that place was a very dangerous battlefield, and he would surely die if he walked around unarmed. Neither soldier wanted our hero on their team, so the 2 began to argue amongst themselves over who would take the rookie. But in the end, the blonde soldier relented and called the young man over to meet the rest of the team. He then stated his name and announced that he was the captain of the squad Han Zhan would be joining. The captain also introduced the other recruits, Kai Shifang and Xiao Qian. The blonde girl immediately interrupted the conversation, complaining that she had gotten completely soaked on their last mission. She then tried to put on her coat but got stuck in the fabric. Next, she asked the protagonist to lend a hand. Han Zhan helped her get unstuck, and afterward the girl approached him and thanked him for the help. The blonde girl then asked the captain if that was the team's new recruit, also finding it strange that he hadn't brought any human-shaped spirits with him. The protagonist then formally introduced himself to the group and said he had brought some gifts, releasing several valuable items he had taken from the city vault all at once. All the recruits were very excited about the received items and began to thank the protagonist for his generous gesture. The captain, however, refused the gift. He said he didn't need them, as he was a mecha operator and didn't use conventional defensive items. The captain continued speaking, ordering the recruits to prepare for the next mission immediately. When the leader walked away, our hero asked the others if he truly was a mecha operator. One of the recruits replied yes, explaining that after the captain's combat partner died, he became a mecha operator to continue fighting in the war. This lively conversation was soon interrupted by the captain himself, who arrived throwing sacks of potatoes at them. Han Zhan then asked what their mission was, and the captain replied that they were going to cut the descendants. This left our protagonist quite confused. The captain explained the situation, saying they were going to eliminate the Izaki clan snakes, monsters that reproduce 10,000 times faster than humans. He continued, stating that because of this absurd rate, they had been losing the war in that area until a month ago. But fortunately, the return of leader Wei Qing managed to turn the tide in humanity's favor. However, even though Wei Qing had defeated many of these creatures, some had managed to escape. The group's mission now was precisely to find the nest of these escaped snakes. They then set off on their mission. The scene soon cut to a dark forest, showing our group hunting for the monsters' nests. Hanjan believed they had finally reached the correct destination, but something unusual high above caught his attention. Looking up, he noticed a very strange fabric hanging, which appeared to be a giant skin, and this bizarre material was spread throughout the entire forest, covering almost all the trees. The group leader commented that it was the Izaki snake's shed skin, a process that occurs every time they level up. Suddenly, the protagonist let out a loud shout, warning everyone that the creature's eggs were hidden deep within this disgusting fabric. Immediately afterward, numerous eggs began to plummet from above, falling directly towards the ground. From inside his robot armor, the captain explained that these snakes were enormous and that the eggs were kept in the dead skin, confirming that this was indeed their target. But to everyone's great surprise, the eggs began to crack open on their own mid-fall. This left the group completely shocked, as they questioned what kind of strange noise they had just heard coming from the eggs. As the eggs continued to fall non-stop, a deafening sound began to emanate from that same direction. The sound pressure of this attack was so strong that it threw the heavy armor the captain was piloting backward. The captain ended up falling from the edge of the cliff, while our protagonist desperately tried to reach his comrade to save him. Hanjin managed to grab the machine's metal arm and, with immense strength, hurled the robot back to the top of the cliff. This caused the leader to land safely on the ground, wondering in awe how that young recruit possessed such physical strength. The team was deeply saddened by the scene, believing our hero couldn't possibly survive that terrible fall into the abyss. Completely desolated by the tragic event, the armor pilot began to blame himself for the boy's fate. But then, to everyone's relief, a hand suddenly emerged, gripping firmly onto the edge of the cliff. It was our hero, who asked for a quick hand to finish climbing back up. Everyone on the team was overjoyed and relieved to see the protagonist safe and sound. Then, as the young man approached, the leader said, quite irritated, that it was completely wrong for Hanjan to try and sacrifice himself to save his life. The protagonist simply replied calmly that he understood. While they were still talking, several snakes began to approach the group's position very quickly. Hanjan realized that these were newborn Izaki clan snakes, and the captain immediately ordered everyone to be very careful. The hairy recruit and the blonde girl were visibly frightened by the absurd number of baby snakes appearing from all sides. The monsters then charged head-on towards the group, and the leader confronted the beasts directly using the strength of his armor. The blonde girl, horrified by the scene, said that with such an enormous number of snakes, it was simply impossible for them to escape alive. In that moment of tension, the protagonist activated his special ring, raising a large protective aura barrier around the entire group. The snakes stopped and merely observed the protected group in confusion, patiently waiting for an opportunity to attack. The captain also seemed quite confused by all those stationary snakes, just watching their movements. Our hero then asked what the captain was waiting for to use his armor's weapons and burn those snakes. Hearing this, the captain reacted and began using the mecha's flamethrower to burn and destroy all the snakes. Everyone present was utterly impressed by the machine's devastating firepower and congratulated Hanjan for saving their lives earlier. When the captain finally finished incinerating all the beasts, he commented that the young man was not arrogant at all, unlike other nobles. But soon, a red alert appeared on the robot's screen. This made Hanjan curious, and he asked what had just happened. The captain replied that the other team's missions to eradicate the nests had not gone well at all. He went on to say that if it weren't for the protagonist's help, they too would certainly have failed. He continued explaining that the Izaki clan's snakes knew exactly where the human reinforcements were. Because of this, he suggested that the protagonist use the power of his ring to attract the snakes towards them, serving as a distraction. Hanjan sincerely replied that he wasn't sure if they could eliminate all the snakes by themselves, but warned that if they didn't run, the snakes would certainly finish them off. Suddenly, a gigantic rank 15 Izaki tribe nest guardian snake stealthily appeared behind the group. When they noticed the creature's presence, everyone was astonished by its colossal size. But Hanjan immediately shouted, ordering everyone to run from there at once. Hearing this, the two rookie recruits in the group ran off in terror, believing it was impossible to defeat such a gigantic monster. At this critical moment, the captain showed his full courage and began using his complete arsenal to buy time and allow his friends to escape. Unfortunately, the attack seemed to have no effect on the snake, which reacted quickly, using its gigantic fangs to capture the robot armor. Immediately after, the giant monster crushed the captain's robot with immense brute force. By a narrow margin, the captain managed to escape alive from inside the machine, but he ended up falling from a great height at high speed. After that, the monster focused its attention on the two fleeing recruits. They froze in fear and simply stood still as the beast attacked mercilessly. But at the last second, the magic shield from the items the protagonist had given them earlier activated, and their lives were temporarily saved. However, the snake did not give up so easily and spat a powerful corrosive acid. The attack melted the magical protection and completely disintegrated the two teammates. Our hero Han Zhan became furious witnessing the death of his comrades and glared at the monster with a terrifying, hate-filled gaze. At that moment, the creature violently charged and tried to attack him, but the young man managed to escape by a hair's breadth at the last second. Seeing that the situation had become too complicated, Han Zhan invoked his magic sword and began to conjure a hurricane to defend himself. The snake noticed the young man's strategy and launched a venomous dart at the protagonist, knocking him to the ground immediately. While he was still fallen and vulnerable, the snake seized the opportunity to attack out of nowhere and tried to swallow Han Zhan whole. Before the snake could devour him, a large, brilliant attack descended from the heavens and struck the creature's head squarely, causing it to fall to the ground utterly lifeless. Immediately after, a mysterious woman in a blue dress named Gongyang Jin revealed herself at the scene and calmly greeted the protagonist. She said that Han Zhan was very impressive and even her type, but warned that she wasn't exactly who the young man thought she was. She explained that she came directly from the exiled district, which is known worldwide as one of the most dangerous places there are. Han Zhan commented that this famous city of exiles was practically entirely inhabited by people who had been expelled from society. He then used his special power to view the woman's status and was very surprised, discovering that she was a rank 8 Valkyrie. The woman in blue nimbly jumped behind the young man and praised the magical resonance of his sword, saying that she had decided to use Han Zhan as her support from now on. The young man tried to refuse the proposal, but the woman made it very clear that she would not accept someone of level 3 daring to defy her orders. Han Zhan explained that he couldn't go with her because he was in the middle of a very important mission and couldn't simply abandon his post, but the woman insisted, saying she could force him to go. So our hero made a radical decision and said he would rather die than be forced to do something. The beautiful warrior then realized he was very serious and asked what she needed to do to convince him to accompany her. The protagonist replied that he would only accept being her support if she helped him complete his current mission, which was to exterminate the Izaki snake nest. Hearing this condition, the powerful warrior agreed without hesitation to lend her strength to help the young man. The hero began pointing out some strategic locations on the region's map where they could find the remaining snakes to finish the job. The woman seemed not at all concerned about the monsters, but then a strange and very dark smoke began to emerge from her back. This shadow began to transform into a horrendous monster and took complete control of the warrior's body. The spirit within the sword tried to make the protagonist flee, but the monster completely dominated the woman, and she violently advanced to try and kill the young man. Quick on the draw, Han Zhan invoked his magic sword again and unleashed a great purifying power, freeing the young woman from the shackles of that dark monster. The woman in blue seemed to return to her senses and, quite confused, asked what kind of magic the young man had used to save her. To this, he calmly replied that it was just magic that heals and suppresses negative effects on the body, and then immediately asked what had happened to her. Gongyang Jin explained that she had been infected by a level 9 insect, which was capable of controlling her body and making her enter a completely uncontrollable rage mode. So our hero asks for permission to examine the infection site closely, and the warrior begins to lower her blouse to reveal a large scar on her back. Next, Han Zhan touches the woman's back and begins to channel healing magic, which leaves her in complete ecstasy. He continues, saying that even though the power helped alleviate the pain, it hadn't completely healed her yet, and he decides to try using a much more powerful magic. A large cauldron of vital energy appears out of nowhere and begins to bathe the woman, healing her deepest wounds. The healing process seems to greatly please the warrior, who says that the protagonist continues to surprise her with each new moment. Han Zhan informs her that the infection is already 50% healed, but to maintain this regeneration process, he will need to absorb a lot of vital energy from the surrounding insects. Determined to solve this problem once and for all, The girl changes the subject and says they will complete the snake extermination mission right now. She firmly grabs the boy's arm, and the two take flight, immediately heading into action. The scene then cuts to a drone flying over the entire forest area, controlled remotely by Lin Jingxuan's team. He observes on the screens that the insect army is very well prepared for war, and he informs his soldiers that the superior orders are to simply wait and prepare for the worst. Returning to the forest, we see our hero positioned atop a very high rock, observing the stealthy movements of all those snakes. Han Jan then leaps from the cliff and lands in the midst of the monsters with full force, causing a large explosion on the ground. The woman in blue watches everything and finds the boy very courageous for doing such a crazy thing. In the military control room, everyone is surprised to see our hero invading the nest via security cameras, and they believe he is merely putting his own life at unnecessary risk. We then see that the protagonist is delivering several powerful punches against the beasts, but even he isn't managing to kill the snakes due to their absurd resistance. The monsters then end up surrounding Han Jan from all sides. However, at this critical moment, the woman in blue truly springs into action and fires a devastating laser at the beasts. She descends from the sky, slicing several of those creatures into pieces. But our hero doesn't fall behind and decides to unlock the third gate of his secret martial arts technique. He delivers a powerful punch into the air just to test his new power, and a large wave of energy destroys everything in front of him. This leaves the woman visibly surprised by his strength. Meanwhile, in the control room, Lin Jingxuan recognizes the mysterious woman through the cameras as Gongyang Jin and informs the others that she is a dangerous villain recently defeated by the authorities. Returning to the battlefield, our dynamic duo has already defeated all the snakes in that nest, and Han Jan decides to absorb all the remaining energy from them to use in the warrior's healing. After that, the young man invokes his mystical cauldron again and informs Gongyang Jin that the final medical treatment will finally begin. Then, the woman prepares herself, and the glowing healing liquid begins to pour over her as she makes some grimaces, feeling the strong magical reaction of the process in her body. We then see that a black thorn is still deeply embedded in the woman's back, and she asks the protagonist to pull it out once and for all. The cauldron begins to strongly suck out all the remaining evil energy from within the warrior's body, and she lets out a loud scream of pain during this agonizing extraction.